Remake Rewind.
All right, thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decided remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always. With me, I've got Dustin. How you doing, Dustin?
Doing well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, bud. And of course, we got the wonderful Double D. How you doing, David?
Doing pretty good, Mike. Thanks for introducing me.
Oh, it's kind of like what I got to do every episode, just in case there's new listeners.
Everybody knows me. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, but what if there's a new listener, Double D?
I know a ton of people. I might know them. The new listener might be my friend.
Oh, okay, got it.
There's a very good chance of that, actually.
I mean, you are a great guy. One of the best that I know. Delightful.
Oh, thank you, Michael.
I might want to call you Triple D. Delightful Double D.
No, it's too many D's.
It's too many D's. Anyway, and that other laugh
3D.
you may have heard is Katrina. How are you doing, Katrina?
Konnichiwa, bitches.
Oh, shit.
Damn. All right, so for those of you guys who don't know Katrina, she is my wife and one of the hosts of Ruin My Childhood.
Woo.
So thanks for guest starring on this episode, Katrina. And why don't you tell our listeners what movie we're going to be watching, or what movies we watched?
Ugh. Well, we watched Ghostbusters. One was a classic, one not so much, but still enjoyable.
Fair assessment. I would agree with that.
All right, so yeah, we watched the 1980s classic Ghostbusters and the 2016 all-female reboot. And I'm just going to say, I actually enjoyed them both, and I've got a lot to say about the newer one, and I was very pleasantly surprised on the second viewing, so I really liked it.
Yeah, I liked them both, too. I think they're both good. I mean, you know, the hard part is, like, the original Ghostbusters is, like, a classic comedy. Well, actually, more specifically, it's what I call a SAC, a supernatural action comedy.
Good old sax.
Other movies in that vein would be, you know, like Big Trouble in Little China. I'd say a little bit like Hellboy would kind of be considered a SAC.
I've never heard the term sack.
Well,
I mean, Hellboy makes me think of a sack, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
What?
What other SACs? Well, anyway, you know, you can figure it out. You get it. We're like the people, like, you know, it's
Like
supposed
Bill
to be
and Ted,
scary
maybe?
and stuff. No, Bill and Ted doesn't.
Oh, no,
well,
there's no
Bill
action in
and Ted's
Bill and Ted.
Bogus Journey, maybe.
Yeah,
Because you
maybe.
got death and
Excellent
stuff.
to each other.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like, movies where, like, there is a supernatural element that's like monsters or demons or ghosts, and, like, the heroes are, like, not necessarily
Monster
scared
Squad.
of it, you know? Like, they're scared, but, like, they're also, like, cracking wise the whole time.
Yeah, like Monster Squad.
Yeah, sure.
Like Goonies with monsters. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sack.
Yeah. It's a good old sack.
I think that's just
All
making
right.
me like these films less.
The sax?
The sacks.
It's a sack.
Oh.
All right, so let's just get into the movies. Dustin, can you give me a synopsis for the 80s classic version?
Oh, man. Can I ever? Let's see. How long of a synopsis would we like here? Let's see if we can keep it brief.
Let's keep
There's
it
a lot
brief.
of them here. 3 oddball scientists get kicked out of their cushy positions at a university in New York City where they studied the occult. They decide to set up shop in an old firehouse and become Ghostbusters, trapping pesky ghosts, spirits, haunts, and poltergeists for money. They wisecrack their way through the city and stumble upon a gateway to another dimension, one which will release untold evil upon the city. The Ghostbusters are called upon to save the Big Apple.
Dun, dun.
They don't study the occult.
No, they do. They have, like, extensive knowledge of the occult.
Well, I
dude.
mean,
Yeah.
Egon does, but I wouldn't say
No,
they study the occult.
Ray's probably more the occult studier guy.
Yeah.
But
Wait,
they do
wait,
study
wait.
the occult. Like, they know all the
The
books to go through, like
supernatural.
Tobin's Spirit Guide. And, like, you
That's
know, like,
true.
they do all kinds of stuff, dude. They're the Ghostbusters.
Which one is which? Because I
So-
did not remember their
All right,
names
let's
this
see if you
entire
can
film.
figure it out. Let's see if you can figure it out, and then we'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
I don't even
do
know
you
what
mean?
I'm having to work with.
Okay. So which one is Venkman
Ugh.
It's not Sigourney Weaver, I'll tell you.
or Rick Moranis?
He's not a Ghostbuster.
No, he's not. So
In the
Venkman.
second movie, he's a Ghostbuster.
Dan Aykroyd?
Nope. Venkman is Bill Murray, so
Ugh.
this is gonna get easier as we go.
I hate Bill Murray.
Which one's Egon?
Egon. I've never
Egon
even heard this
Spengler.
name before.
You said it all throughout the movie. Okay, so Egon is the
Harold
is
Ramis.
Harold Ramis.
Never heard it.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, guys, I was embroidering while I watched this.
Okay.
All right. And then, so rounding out the crew, you've got Man, now I can't even think of the names. I'm
See,
completely
it's not
blanking.
that
is
easy.
Dan Aykroyd,
Ray Stantz is Dan Aykroyd.
and Winston Zeddemore is Ernie Hudson. Isn't that his name?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Ernie Hudson.
Well, there you go.
Man. So, just right off the bat, is there anything that you guys want to go into before? 'Cause I've got a lot of notes.
I think this is kind of one of the biggest differences I felt between the two movies, and why I like the original more, and that is because I feel like you had very funny people writing jokes for this movie, and I feel like with the remake or reboot, you had funny people, and I feel like they were kind of like told to just improvise and be funny.
Yeah.
So it felt really different, and I preferred the structure and the timing of the jokes in the original.
I would
much more.
agree if you weren't entirely wrong.
Okay.
Because while there was a structure to it, if like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff basically says that like 80% of this movie was improv, and basically none of what any scene that has Bill Murray in it, none of it was completely how it was scripted. Like, it was basically he threw out the script on his scenes.
Okay.
That's because he's a narcissistic
I
asshole.
get what you're
Dan
saying.
Aykroyd and Harold Ramis did not write this movie.
They did write it, but most of the script, like you
Vaguely.
can look at a ton of stuff, and basically it says like the script was like give it structure, but basically almost all of it went away once they got Bill Murray involved.
Right, and that's why all the scenes where he is sort of, leading the scene are super clunky.
I agree, but to Dustin's original point, for the most part, I agree with you on that's the problem with modern comedies, is because there's less structure and it's all ad-libbed. Like, there are so many, like, even the new one
These
did have
guys
a
did
lot of
it
scenes
way
that went
better.
too long.
I don't know.
They did.
Whatever.
I think
feel
also
like
it had to do with the fact that Bill Murray was the only one doing the improv, and they had the scripted jokes for the others.
Yeah.
Right, everyone was just dancing around him. With modern comedy, you have so many fucking bigwigs on every project, and every producer and every writer and every actor, they're all doing all three things, and they all want to keep their bit in the movie. And that's why the improv shit goes way too long on new stuff, which I feel like the newer version actually escaped, which is a rarity these days. But you can really tell in the old movie that Bill Murray's pretty much the only one improvising, and people are just trying to please him and suck his dick.
He's also not the only person being funny in this movie.
No, he's not.
I don't think he's funny at all.
Okay.
Ugh, I hate Bill Murray.
Why did you be on this episode?
Well, because I really like the new one, but honestly, like, I thought I really loved the old one, and then watching it again, Bill Murray's character is just, he's such a dick. Like, he walks into every scene, like, with his eyes half open, like, obviously not giving a shit about anything, and I don't even feel like it's necessarily that the character was written that way, it's just Bill Murray being a dick.
That was Bill Murray playing that character, though.
No, so actually, if you look into, I agree with Katrina a little bit. Like, when you look into behind the scenes stuff, like, he got slimed at the hotel scene with Slimer, right?
He's like the only one who's not completely covered in slime.
Well, no, he gets slimed
gets fully
significantly
slimed.
with the Slimer scene. But at the end of the movie with the marshmallow
He has
stuff,
no
he
marshmallow
has like
on
none
him.
of
Oh,
it, and that
that's
was
right.
specifically because he refused to do it a second time.
Right.
So there definitely is some moments where in the background and the making of where Bill Murray did flex like his muscle being the biggest name in that movie. And the main reason he did this movie was so he can get funding to do a different movie. So he really wasn't into it. And knowing what we know now with like the history of like getting a remake instead of a sequel, we know he's never really been into the franchise. So I get it, but that could also be us taking what we know now and trying to apply it to a movie that came out 30 years ago. So I get what Katrina's saying, and I agree with it to a large extent, but we don't really know.
Bill Murray.
But I disagree that I don't hate
Yes.
Bill Murray. I love Bill Murray in so many movies. Like, I love The Life Aquatic. I love his cameo in Zombieland. He's in a lot of other great
and
movies.
I feel like The Life Aquatic, it's because that character suits his subdued personality and lack of ability to step it up and be a fucking actor. So it works there.
He was great in Space Jam.
I hate Space Jam.
I love Space Jam.
I love Space Jam too. Well, I think we spent a lot of time on Bill Murray. Let's like move into like the movie. Oh, actually, I do want to say one more thing about Bill Murray's character, Venkman, in this movie. He is pretty creepy, and he's definitely that
dude.
womanizer.
He's not smooth at all. I
He's
have to
not
say.
smooth at all, and he also brought Thorazine on what he thought may be a date. And then ended up drugging Sigourney Weaver's character because she was possessed, legitimately possessed. I get it. But why did he have that Thorazine on him?
That's what they call the thigh opener.
Dr. Peter Venkman and Dr.
But he's not a
Carrie
medical doctor, so he can't go and get these.
The thing that you guys are
prescription stuff.
missing is he's barely a scientist, you guys.
He's
Like,
barely a
he's
scientist.
a
No, he
crappy
is.
scientist and a
He
crappy
is
person.
like that opening scene where he's just doing an experiment specifically to like bang.
He's not, and he's also just shocking that other idiot for no reason. It's
But
hilarious.
What's funny is it works though, because he did end up after guessing
The
that
wavy
final
lines.
one.
He shocked him when he got it right.
Yeah, well, I know he shocked him.
care.
He shocked him every time he got it right, or he shocked.
You
yeah,
shocked him every
harder.
time.
Every time.
Yeah,
That's why
but
it's funny.
But ultimately the experiment worked because he did get it wrong the first 3 times, and then
I think
that,
he
with
just
the wavy
happened
line, when
upon
he
it
did
and
get
he
right,
shocked
still
him
shocked
again.
which
He was
is funny.
barely paying attention to what that guy was doing. He was just shocking some nerd while trying to hit on that girl.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Yeah, he's a terrible person.
Yeah, he's super terrible. Also, Ray is kind of a terrible person too. Or at least
they're
he's
all
lazy.
like they're all lazy. Like they're all working at the university. Like remember when they said like, "Oh, we got to go get real jobs." Like I worked in
Right.
the private sector, and they expect results.
Yeah, and that drove me. They expect results, and I'm like, holy shit, how unprofessional that is.
because they're doing weird, sketchy pseudoscience.
Yeah,
That's why it's funny.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
getting
little-
paid for it.
Well,
did
at least
like-
a couple of them are doing weird, sketchy pseudoscience because throughout the entire film, Venkman is kind of asking them, like, so wait, what are we doing? What's going on? What's happening? Like, he's just there.
Yeah,
yeah,
They don't understand
totally.
it.
Then the other thing is, I do find it hilarious that they've got these basically nuclear accelerators on
Did
their
you just
back.
say nuclear?
No.
Okay.
Well, it
Anyway,
was
so
recorded,
they have
we'll
these
find out.
reactors on their back, and they go to the hotel to basically fight Slimer. And that's when they're about to use it, like, oh, by the way, don't cross the streams. Like, they're so ill-equipped to do this job.
But that's part of the comedy.
It is, and it's great. Like, it's really funny, and obviously it comes full circle, and they
And
have
all
to
this
cross the
stuff
streams
looks
later.
cool. It's all like cool
This stuff
homemade
does
looking
look
stuff.
awesome.
Like all their gear looks dope. Like I don't know that scene
Super
when
dope.
they're in the elevator. And he was like, "I apologize in advance. This equipment is untested. I blame
Right.
myself." It's like I blame you too. Oh, well,
Yeah, that's
switch me
pretty
on,
funny.
and then they like start scooting away from him in the elevator.
Yeah,
It's cool.
yeah, that's great. There is a lot of great humor. Like, I did love this movie. I do think that a big part of it was nostalgia. I
like when
if I'm gonna be honest. Well, I'll talk more about the second one later. Let's.
when they throw the trap out, and he's like, "Don't look into the trap." I looked in the trap. Like all that stuff is really funny.
Yeah. Well, Dustin, you and I were talking the other day. Actually, I think you and I were talking before we even watched the movies, and there was something that you brought up about the hotel scene.
Oh yeah, well, like they've never done it. That's
dude.
their first call, right?
How did
Yeah.
they not get sued after that?
Dude, they got $5,000 after that.
Oh, I
They don't
remember
have
you said-
insurance.
everything.
For that. They're
they
definitely not
they
insured.
captured the ghost and they told the dude like what it would cost for like the trapping and then the containment, and then they told him it's gonna be $5,000. And the guy's like, I had no idea it would be so expensive. I won't pay it. And he's like, well, we can just put it right back in there.
Yeah, he's basically extorting him
Yeah.
at that point.
They're not a legitimate business. Like that's the first
No.
time
They're not
they make
licensed
any
and
money.
The other
bonded.
thing about this movie, what's the quote unquote like bad guy bureaucracy dude's name?
The guy from the EPA.
Yeah, the guy who works for the EPA. Like, to an extent, he's right.
But he comes in
Totally
all
right.
hot, like he's full on having a panic attack the first
he's
time he
just-
meets with them.
A jerk.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah,
should have
like,
been more
did
chill.
He go
His name is
about
Walter
it
Peck.
correctly? No,
Peck,
but yeah,
It's
Peck.
just a little radiation. Calm down.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure they tapped into the power grid in ways they're not supposed to because it's a ton of energy they needed. So while he's technically correct, like, yeah, he was just a dickhead about it. So
I think he
but
said
he's
something about
technically
like noxious gases or something. Like he's making up a bunch of
right.
bullshit.
Well, no, later on, that's what he
Yeah.
does, like, because
And he wants to like
basically-
immediately see the containment unit, and they're like, "No, dude, you can't see it. Sorry."
Yeah, get a warrant.
Yeah.
Which they're totally justified saying, hey, get a warrant and come in, or come in with paperwork.
It would have
Although
been
for
pretty
normal
easy to shut
business-
them down just on the grounds of having illegal lights on their car.
Yeah,
They're
that's
like
true.
driving around the city with shit flashing. Like, that's not legal.
Well, the other thing is, I don't think he would technically need a warrant. Like, you don't need a warrant for like the health inspector or
He says he needs a
OSHA
court
to come.
order. He doesn't say a warrant. He says a court order.
Well, a court order, but even that, like a government official for a business, if you're like, because they were operating a business at that point, like
I don't
he
think
could
they
just
can
got
just come
OSHA
in
to come
and
in.
search your shit like that.
OSHA can.
The dude
and
was the
health
EPA.
inspector-
He wasn't OSHA.
I know, but I'm saying like I'm sure he could have got some. Like there are ways around it. Like they wouldn't have needed to get a court order. Like they could have just
Right.
had OSHA.
You just walk on
somebody
in.
else come in.
EPA hard as fuck.
That's true.
Are they?
Fucking
Yeah.
Are they
dick.
really? How many other
Definitely.
instances of the EPA just jamming somebody up do we got? I don't think they
A
can
lot.
do it. I would have told them get the fuck out of there.
Get out of here, dude.
Fucking get out of here, law dog. The EPA, it's not the ATF, it's not the FBI, it's the EPA.
Yeah. The other thing that this is something that I noticed as a child watching this movie. The very first time I watched this movie, I remembered it, and it's always something that I point out with people who are watching with me. But at the end of the movie, they're taking on the big baddie, and they shoot the proton packs, and they end up like shooting a statue, and like a bunch of rubble falls down. And there's a point where you can see that like they clearly went over budget. They didn't have time to go through and reshoot some of the stuff. But there's a part where like what's supposed to be a giant rock or piece of rubble, clearly foam, hits like a little barrier and just bounces around, and you see like people touch it. It makes me laugh. But it's practical effects, and I'm glad that it got made. Like, but it was really funny. That part pulls me out of the movie every time I see this.
Well, see, they probably saw that in rushes and decided they weren't going to shoot it. So then, when that monster bursts into the neighbor's living room, it took out so much of that freaking wall. Like, that had to not be safe. So they kind of, like, made up for it with that.
Sure.
What the fuck, Mike?
Oh.
Speaking of breaking
But I
into the
think it
apartment,
overall it was
Rick
an
Moranis was
enjoyable
amazing in this movie. His character was
Dude.
hilarious.
We're not
He
going to
was
say what
so young.
the extent of, or like what the terms of this bet were, but Katrina and I had a bet about Rick Moranis' age.
We made a wager on how old he was, and I lost.
How old was he?
He was 31 when he made this movie. I guessed 32, and she guessed like 36.
Oh.
No, I
But
guess
yeah.
35.
That's a
Whatever,
hilarious
I still
story.
won.
35.
Yeah.
Way to go,
Oh.
Mike.
A great bit.
Well, I'm glad you shared that with us.
I'm glad too. And our listeners, I'm glad they heard that. I was right about something.
Wow.
And,
Well, we
my
all
wife
know
was
how
wrong.
important that is.
It's recorded now.
It's very important that a husband is more correct than his wife, at least once.
At least once.
The views of Michael
Yeah.
do not reflect all of the hosts of Remake Rewind.
Dude, what do you guys think about the ghosts in this movie?
You mean Slimer and
No, I mean, like, there's more than one
The
ghost.
ghost
like,
in the library. There's
I
all like
think
the
that
weird
ghost was
ghosts like
really
in that
cool.
montage.
I think
Yeah.
they look pretty good still. Like, I was surprised at how much the effects held up.
They held
really
up. The whole
like
library
those
scene at
ghosts.
the beginning is great. Like with the
Yeah.
Yeah,
cards
it's
flying out
awesome.
and the books moving around. Like that scene is like really cool, and like I like how that introduces you to like their weird gear. Like with
Right.
like Egon's walking around with the PKE meter, and they're like collecting the slime, like and it's gross.
I
Yeah.
love when he pokes the guy after.
Yeah, and I like the whole thing. It's like, okay, guys, I know what to do. Get her.
I do like the it's like in the second movie too, the ghosts look a little bit different, like get a little weird, but I really like this visual style of this movie. And like you guys said, it definitely held up for me.
Yeah.
One thing that I forgot about in this movie was how little Winston was in it though.
Oh
He
my
comes
god,
in
he was
way,
such
way,
a
way
token
late.
black guy.
He comes in halfway
yeah,
through the
definitely.
movie and
And then
only
you don't
has,
see
like,
him for like
3
half an
scenes.
hour.
Well, I was reading.
you don't
I
hear
guess
him.
they were trying to get Eddie Murphy to
Eddie
play
Murphy.
that,
Yeah.
and he was going to
Yeah.
come in like way, way earlier and have much more of a role, and then they couldn't get him, so they're like, "Well, okay, never mind."
I guess we'll settle
Well,
for
they ended up getting
Bill
Bill
Murray.
Murray after that, and so Bill Murray assumed much more of the comedic role, not necessarily comedic, but he absorbed a lot of his lines because the whole point of the Winston character was to be that everyman, so he can be like the exposition machine, basically, to explain the pseudoscience to us. And then Venkman ended up doing that because he's a shitty scientist.
pretty much.
I also really liked Annie Potts as Janine.
Yeah.
Janine was great.
No,
She's
she's
funny.
awesome. I like
I
her.
like when like she's like trying to be cool for a while, and then she's hella frustrated, and she answers the phone like, "Ghostbusters, what do you want?" I like that a lot.
This is one of the only movies where Larry King doesn't look like the Crypt Keeper yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
That was impressive.
The other thing that's interesting is Rick Moranis' character totally banged Dana.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yep,
remember
that
them
happened.
like.
Right.
That's how
The-
they did
the
it. That's
whole
what they
plot
had to do
being
to make all
sexual.
this shit go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
They
ended
were
up
possessed
looking
though, so
up
I don't know if
the
that counts.
like the dates of the movie to see because I know the second Ghostbusters comes out like 5 years later. But I wanted to know like is that 5 years actually time in the movie? And it turns out it was because that would have been interesting if he was Oscar's father, but he's not.
Mm.
That would have been really awkward.
That would have been very strange. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of the other one-liners I wrote down. Like, there's a point when they're going to that first like hotel scene and they're gonna take on Slimer, and that guy's like waiting for the elevator, and ultimately he's like, "I'll take the next one." And they're like, "What are you here for?" "Cockroaches. They'll bite your head off," or something like that. Like,
Oh,
banter
yeah, I
was
do
really
remember
good in
that.
this
He was
movie.
like, they must be big.
Yeah.
They must be huge or something.
"Yeah,
like
they'll
that.
bite your head off."
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when they basically get called to the mayor's office to be like, "What the hell's going on?" And Bill Murray has his little rant. But I did like the part when Peck comes in and he's like, "They're unleashing like you brought up, Dustin, like they're unleashing gases and they're making people hallucinate and whatever it was," and they're like. He said something about him being dickless, and then the mayor's like, "Is that true?" And he goes, "Yes, this man
Yeah,
has no dick."
Yeah.
And laughed really hard at that part.
Yeah. That part was good.
Speaking of dicks, there's like a super unnecessary ghost BJ in there. Completely forgot about that until
It
I
was a
watched
dream.
this again.
Yeah, I
was a
get that
dream.
it was a dream, but it's weird that it was in there. Like, it didn't really
Super
fit
weird.
with the rest of like that because that was during like that montage of
Yeah.
all the different ghosts and then being on magazines, and then it has that. Like, it's the only dream sequence in the movie,
Yeah.
so it's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's throwing a
it's-
BJ.
he does a weird face that's kind of funny though. His eyes do that.
I like how like the Dana character and the Lewis character when they're possessed, like they're looking for each other, the gatekeeper
Right.
and the keymaster, and like Dana's character is like talking to Venkman, right? And it's like, "Are you the keymaster?" and like slams the door. But then like Lewis's character is like running around the city. Like at one point he's talking to that horse.
The horse, yeah.
He's like, "Are you the gatekeeper?" And then he says to the horse, like, "Wait for the sign, then our prisoners will be released." And he turns up to the guy and he's like, "You'll perish in flame, you and all your kind."
Oh, jeez.
It's really funny.
Rick Moranis is great in this movie. I do like how he's also having that party,
Yeah.
and like all the
And
guests
he gets
are
locked
his
up.
His clients.
clients,
Yeah.
so he can write off the party.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, you like that Nova Scotia salmon? Normally $21 a pound, $14.98 after this. I'm running this whole thing off.
Yeah, it's really funny. That character is
Stupid.
great.
Want to come inside
Oh,
for
man.
mineral water?"
I mean, I still think this movie held up.
It
I
totally
think it was
holds up.
great.
This is a classic.
I mean, are you guys? Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Or are you guys ready to move on to?
Wait. I don't understand like how at the restaurant, all those diners, like the full wall is windows. Does no one see that ghost dog thing that's chasing her?
No.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
No,
So
No.
weird. I don't understand that.
No.
no. There's a lot of things.
Did Zool do her fucking hair and makeup? That was weird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she looks
definitely.
like David Bowie.
Yeah,
After
like
that point.
when did she have time for that?
Mm,
Magic, supernatural.
yeah. Could have been done with some kind of telekinetic activity.
You know what's interesting? That
The-
building, like
The building being a
That-
conduit for like
conduit,
supernatural
and like
shit.
you go up to that roof, and it looks like it's like part of some cult or something.
Yeah.
It's a fucking
It's
weird
like a
building. I
mausoleum
wouldn't
at the
want to
top,
live in
yeah,
that
like-
building.
Well, they have to like, don't they get like they go to the city to like get the plans for the building or whatever, and like research the history of it, which is
Yeah.
kind of similar to what the Patty character brings to the team, right? In the remake, like she
In the
knows all
remake,
of the
Right.
stuff about New York City.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's cool.
Yeah, and you find out that it's this cult and everything who's trying to bring about
Yeah.
Zool and Gozer. But yeah, it's a fucking weird building. Like clearly, there's something wrong with that if you go upstairs. But, yeah.
Did they do battle at all with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, or did they only shoot at the building?
Oh.
No,
They only shot the building. I
no,
think
they shot at it and
a
it was
little bit.
doing nothing. Like it was for very little effect, I think.
Yeah, like he like lit on fire and then started climbing, and they're like, "Oh, that's not gonna work." And then Egon's like, "Let's reverse the polarity, cross the streams, And then, that famous scene where they do that and everyone's freaking out, and then everything's fine.
You know
Crossing the
what
streets
I
and
wish
nothing
this movie had more of, though? Like, introducing us to how they kind of met and got together and developed
backstory.
developing the technology a little bit more.
That is one thing I did like about the new one. They did have a lot more backstory.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of things that I think the new one did better. And there are a few problems I have with the new one, but I liked them, I think, equally. I actually almost think I liked the new one better, but it's really close.
Dude, like, going into this, I thought that I was gonna love the old one just as much as I used to, and now I think having the new one to compare it to, I can't get there with the old one.
Huh. I've got one other note. I agree with you 100%. Like, I thought I was gonna love the old one and kind of not like the new one, because I only kind of liked the new one when I saw it in theaters.
Right.
I liked them both, but it was pretty equal. But I just want to close with, I don't know why, but this has always been one of my favorite quotes. And they're talking to Egon, and she goes, "You have any?" It's Janine is like, "You have any hobbies?" He's like, "I collect spores, molds, and fungi."
Yeah.
It's just exact quintessential Egon. I don't know why, but I've always found that line to be hilarious.
It's a great line.
It is fantastic.
And yeah, I don't have anything. This movie's great. We'll just keep talking about how great it is.
Endlessly quotable.
Picking. Yeah, there's a lot of great one-liners in it, and it's understandable why people have been wanting a third movie for 30 years.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good movie.
that's
Classic.
Yep.
Agreed.
Meh.
All right. So just a little bit of bookkeeping, really quick. We are going to be talking about Patreon really quick. I do have to give a shout out to our latest patron. We've got Alex Griffin. She's actually donated $15 to us and is our first executive producer patron on patreon.com.
Nice.
So we're going to be sending her an autographed Blu-ray. She's going to get to pick out some artwork from Dustin. And she's going to be permanently on our About Us section as an executive producer on MDXpods. So thank you so much, Alex, for being our new patron. We really appreciate it, and we're going to put that money to great use. Eventually we're going to upgrade equipment. We're going to start doing more prizes and giveaways and stuff. So thank you so much for making this podcast better. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to get a nice pen to sign that.
You're such a great guy, dude. You're so considerate.
Well, she's buying it.
Yep.
So I'm ready just to dive right into the new one. Katrina, can you go ahead and summarize that for us?
Yeah, there's one plot summary on IMDb, so I'm just going to read that. It says, following a ghost invasion of Manhattan, paranormal enthusiast Aaron Gilbert and Abby Yates, nuclear engineer Gillian Holtzman, and subway worker Patty Tolan band together to stop the otherworldly threat.
Yeah,
That is written
totally.
by Anonymous.
Thank
done.
you,
I want
Anonymous.
to stand by what they said. I don't trust it now. So I already kind of said it in the other one. I was surprised by how much I liked this one. When Katrina and I saw it in theaters, we had a bad experience on that.
Oh, God.
So I'm not going to go into it, but yeah, we had a bad experience. And I remember liking the movie, but I was kind of like, eh. But this time, and I went into this one expecting it to be either worse than I remembered it or just meh. But I was pleasantly surprised. I really had a great time watching this movie.
I remember liking it, but it was also, I think, skewed because of like how politicized the entire premiere of this movie was. Like there was all kinds of like racist shit going down with one of the actresses, and then on top of it, like people just being sexist pieces of shit. And so I feel like some people who really liked the movie were hyping it more than it needed to be. And so I wasn't really sure who to believe going in. There were just all kinds of expectations when we were watching it initially. And so I definitely enjoyed it a lot more going back to it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
This is
me
the
too.
second time watching it for me. I honestly didn't enjoy it the first time at all. And this time I got like halfway through and I was like, oh, well, this is the same movie I watched last time. And then that last hour, I actually really enjoyed.
The action at the end, like that finale, especially when Holtzman starts
Dude,
going.
that's my favorite
great.
scene. That
That
just
was
like
gnarly.
it's just like you watching her being a fucking badass. I love that scene.
And it makes a lot of sense. Like, I know they're ghosts. I mean, their names are Ghostbusters, not ghost capturers. And it would make sense that if there was a big event, like, they wouldn't be able to capture all of them. So it was interesting that they had weapons capable of destroying ghosts versus just containing them. So I did think that was pretty cool that they had, like, the grenades and the, like, those punchy things, and like she had the
Shredder.
weird pistol whips.
The Shredder was awesome.
That was really cool. The Shredder's awesome. I agree.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I liked it when I saw it, and I liked it. This is like the third or fourth time I've seen this movie. I don't have any real complaints about it at all. I like the way it incorporates, like, you know, it's a different time, right? It's not the 80s.
Right.
And I like the way it uses like the YouTube stuff and the comments people leave. Like, I like that video surfaces where it's like, I believe in ghosts. I saw a ghost. I saw a ghost.
I also like that the property, like they went to the firehouse and it's like rent's $21,000 a month, and she's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Keeping it real.
Yeah, totally. Like, so, like, that's one of the things I liked. Like, I really do think this hit the spirit of the original, like finding a business, these disgraced scientists. Like, it was very faithful to the original, but like, I think you mentioned it earlier, Double D, like getting or you and Katrina and Double D both mentioned like putting the background of the science and getting to know a little bit more about how they're qualified to be doing this, and just seeing them, like, you saw different proton packs as the movie went on.
Right. And like
I really liked that.
You got into the action already actually giving a shit about the characters. Which
I did like the opening of this a lot better.
Right.
With I don't know that guy's actor's name, but he's Gabe in The Office, and he's also in Silicon Valley.
Ed Mulgrave's son, or is that someone else?
I don't know.
It's Zach Woods. Tour guide
Zach
Garrett.
Zach Woods.
I love that opening scene. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And then when they go back with the like the guy comes in and let's see, Ed Mulgrave has been dead for 15 years. And she's like, who's that? She's like, oh, that's Ed Jr. Clearly that's who we meant. Like, I thought that was hilarious. Man, I actually really liked this. I wrote down so many one-liners, and I fucking loved Chris Hemsworth in this movie.
Yeah, he was
Too
great.
loud.
What was
So
that?
good.
Oh, the loud he would rub his eyes.
Yeah.
And he did that throughout the entire movie. Like, anytime something was loud, he would rub his face.
Yeah.
Like, he was able to, like, remember to do that. It was great. And his cat. Can I bring my cat? No, I have
My
allergies.
cat.
I don't have
a
a
dog.
cat. I have a dog. Your dog's name is my
Well,
cat?
his full
No, it's
name
my
is
cat.
Michael Hat.
Stupid.
Super stupid.
And then, like, his logos that he drew were great.
Is it
Like the
so I
hot
can make
dog
them bigger.
floating.
The hot dog. It would imply a ghost is haunting it.
I think
Yeah.
this is like one of the rare modern comedies where I think the timing is just excellent. And like, of course, part of that is the directing, part of it's the actors, part of it's the editing. But like, I think there was only one scene in this that I didn't think was super funny, and that was with the dean of the school.
Yeah, with, like, the flipping off.
The
That went on
bird.
a really long
Right,
time.
like why did he need to, like, we could have just not had him in this movie at
Yeah.
all, but the rest
Well, I mean,
of
it
it,
could
like,
have been a one-line thing.
the timing was just such gold in this movie.
I agree for the most part. I felt that there were a few scenes that I felt went on. Like, I wrote down that middle finger thing with the dean. I agree, that was stupid. I also thought the scene when they try out the proton pack for the first time, and I forgot the character's name. I'm going to try to use their names because I'm terrible at Yates, played by Melissa McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that scene where she's playing around with it and it's like a fire hose and she's flying around, I thought that went on a little too long. And I didn't like the scene with Bill Murray.
I didn't
I
like
thought that
any
went on
of
a
the
really long
cameos.
time.
I thought it was dumb. They should have not done that.
I enjoyed
mind the Harold
watching them
Ramis one,
kill
just
Bill
the bust.
Murray, personally.
Flung out the
I
window.
thought that scene went too long.
I just enjoyed
But
that they
I-
killed Bill Murray.
Man, you don't like Bill Murray.
I fucking hate Bill Murray. He's such
What
a
did
dick.
he do to you?
Dude, like, he had it. Okay, I've got beef with him for, like,
Apparently.
seriously, he had a chance to, like, give this guy one last movie by doing the Ghostbuster thing before he died, and they just fucked him over, and then the poor guy died. Like, come on. Such a, like, he sits on that script for how many years and doesn't even fucking read it? Like, I have beef with Bill Murray.
I
You don't
I
do
agree
that.
that it was how he handled the whole Ghostbusters 3, you know, knowing the backstory. Like, he, after they did the video game, he's like, you know what, maybe I'd be interested in doing the movie if I can just die and then be a ghost cameo at the end of the movie. And so they wrote that in, and then he said in an interview he didn't read the script for like 18 months. It just sat there.
Oh my god.
And so I agree. I think it is a little messed up. Like, he should have just been like, I don't want to do it, and then let them
Right.
go on and do it. But it was in limbo for so long because of him that they just ended up not being able to do it. I agree. That is a little messed
I just
up.
don't like prima donna bitches like that, you know? Plus, he's fuck ugly.
But once again, I think he's great in other roles.
Anyway,
I'm not gonna
moving
say I
on.
hate Bill Murray.
Definitely hate Bill Murray. That's it.
God, I could talk about Chris Hemsworth
Ugh.
for an hour.
I think you've done it
He
before.
was so. Was that?
I think you've talked about Chris Hemsworth for a good long time
don't-
before.
I love
There's
him
so
in this
much to
movie. He's
talk
really
about.
Funny. He's
There's
so
his
funny.
left bicep and
think
his
my other
right
line is-
bicep, his left pec.
I did
His
like
right
when he
pec.
got possessed by the Rowan guy. And he's like, I should have worked that when I was alive.
Yeah, and he's like picking things up super easy and
I like when someone throws him back his sandwich.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
his comedic timing was great. Like Chris Hemsworth is actually really funny. I thought he was great in this movie, and he also did like a little prima donna thing. But I'm kind of glad he did. Is they wanted him to be just like the secretary, and it was gonna be a small role. And then he's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want it to be bigger. So they rewrote the role and made it bigger. But I think it was to the benefit of the film. I thought he was great.
Right.
Awesome. I could just read all. I wrote seriously down like 20 quotes from him, and I'm not going to read them all just because people should go watch the movie. Anything that you guys want to talk about? Because I could just keep talking. It's too easy for me to do that.
I really liked Holtzman in this movie. I thought
Oh,
she
she's
added a
great.
lot
She's the
to this
best.
movie. Yeah, definitely.
She was really funny, and like I loved her tech. Like it was.
And in the fight scene, I was like, well, how the hell are they all fighting like this? And then it was Holtzman's whips, I guess. And I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. She's Holtzman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree 100%.
like visually, I mean, just because it's like a modern movie, but like I think it's more interesting to look at. It's more colorful.
Did you-
Like
Dude.
Something blew my mind on this.
We
movie, but I'm gonna
didn't
let you
notice
finish.
this until we were watching it again.
what did you
But-
notice?
So they played with the aspect ratio. So this movie was an ultra wide. So even on a widescreen TV, you still had the black bars on the top and bottom. But I didn't notice it until they went into the subway and they go after that bad guy or that ghost with the sparks. And I noticed like lightning going out of the aspect ratio. And Katrina's like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Why would they do that?
And I'm like, no. So we rewound it, and of course we see it. And then like throughout the movie, you see the proton blast go outside of the aspect ratio, like slime
it
goes
looks
out
so
through
good.
it.
It's for the 3D effect.
It
yeah.
blew my mind. I thought it was great. Like I've never seen anything like that. I mean, obviously I did in theaters, but I didn't realize it.
It was, well, I think it might have been exaggerated for the Blu-ray release.
I loved it.
I loved it too.
It blew my mind. I thought it was really cool.
Rare treat. Speaking of that scene in the subway, I like how what's her face kind of just like jumps down the track. She's walking up to this thing. It looks like a fucking bomb. Like you all have a fucking campaign. Like see something, say something.
Then
Like
say something.
your job is not paying you enough. I guarantee for you to not just turn around and run the fuck out of there and pull the
it's
alarm. Like
funny
no.
That you say something, because that is the initial
Oh my God, that's right.
advertisement that they used for the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, my note on that is nah, bro. Like, no, there's no way. That job sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Dude.
I wouldn't want to be a subway worker
Right?
in
Wasn't
New
it like
York.
2 years ago in San Francisco that naked dude was like slapping his junk around and everything, and that person just had to sit in their little booth and watch it?
No, I'm sure that definitely happened.
That probably happens all the time.
There's a lot of
I
video
just
of that
want
one.
to say, I want to apologize to I can't remember her name right now, the actress who played Patty. What's her name?
Leslie
I feel
Jones.
terrible because
Leslie Jones.
The first time I watched this movie, I hated her character. I thought she was just loud, obnoxious,
Really?
and I really did not like her especially in that like scene in the concert. And she was just loud and everything. But this time around, like, because I remember not liking it, I actually was very surprised, and I feel bad. Like, I really liked her character this time around. Like, like you brought up earlier, Dustin, that she was the one who knew all about the city,
Yeah.
and she knew where all the different haunting places were. You know,
And she gets the car. She's very helpful.
Yes,
she's a very solid member of the team.
Great.
I mean, she's kind of a dick because, like, she paints her uncle's hearse. Like, how is that okay?
Yeah.
I like
She
that she
didn't
just
paint it.
shows
She
up
was
in
pissed
the
that it was
restaurant.
painted.
Who painted it? I completely
Probably
missed
I
that.
think
Holtzman.
it was Holtzman. Like she's like,
It would have
she
had
gets
to be
mad
her.
that it's painted because she's got to take it back to her uncle.
Yeah, no.
I got
she
to
was
touch
definitely
that
upset
car
about it.
on the lot at Sony. It was just chilling there one day when I was shooting there, and I went up and touched it with my butt.
Oh,
I took a photo of me touching my butt to it.
nice.
One of the other jokes that was in here that was completely random and didn't make sense with the rest of the movie. There's so the movie opens up with Kate McKinnon's character Gilbert getting maybe getting tenure, and so she finds out that this book that she wrote 10 years prior got published. So she goes to visit Yates and Holtzman, and they trick her into like listening to this thing, and it ends up being a fart sound.
So stupid.
And then
I love
Kate
that.
Holtzman goes something along the lines like, "Would it make it grosser if I told you it came from the front?"
Right.
I laughed so hard. It's like, where did that come from? And it's super gross, but I laughed so hard.
Tight jeans, bro. The struggle's real.
Like
Holtzman
another
was
thing
great.
that was just different. I think like with this one, like they were definitely like more skewed to like the science aspects of
Right.
dealing with the ghosts. Like we were talking about, like the other one they studied the occult. Like there wasn't a lot of that in this one. Where like
Well, there's a post-credit scene where they actually bring up Zool, and they're like, "What is Zool?" And like nobody had ever heard of it. They all just shrug it off.
yeah, but they're not like trying to like. There's no like ancient demon or
Exactly.
I
whatever.
mean, they go into the ley lines a little bit, but
Yeah, that was
they don't elaborate too much, and which I like. I think it was unnecessary to go too deep into that.
I agree, and I'm bummed that this movie didn't do as well as it should have,
know.
because you had so many people who refused to see it because it ruined their childhood.
They fucking politicized it. It was bullshit.
They did, and now, like, to an extent, like, I don't understand why they had to go all female, but it didn't hurt the movie. Originally, with the Ghostbusters 3, it was going to be, the original cast was going to be in it, but they were going to kind of, like, usher in the new era. And then they couldn't get the original cast because, Harold Ramis unfortunately passed away. I don't get why they still didn't just acknowledge that Ghostbusters had been around
Right.
and then got a new cast, like Power Rangers, that were, like, diverse and everything like that. They could have done that, and they would have pleased everybody.
I think this
Like,
was
they
a
had to
better
know-
movie than that would have been, though.
We never know, but I enjoyed this movie, and I don't think having an all-female led cast hurt this movie in any kind of way.
I feel
which
like
is stupid that
if
people
they had
thought
gone
would.
that route that you just said, it would have been so much goddamn dick sucking. And honestly, like, Bill Murray's such a bitch that it would have been all about his ego and his demands. And I think this movie had just enough homage to make it, respectable and sort of please the people who actually did watch it if they weren't being little bitches about it. But, I think it was a better film. I liked that it was fresh.
Well, the other thing is, you're right. It ended up being a great movie, and I think going through with the second viewing with fresh eyes made it a lot better. But the marketing for this movie was terrible. Like, the first
Right.
trailer that came out was awful. It was like one of the worst performing videos on YouTube. Now, a lot of people went and just did thumbs down just to be dickheads, but it did mention, like, 30 years ago, 4 scientists, started catching us. Well, first off, there was 3 scientists and Winston, and this movie's not supposed to be in that same universe, so why would you mention it?
Right.
So there was a lot of bad marketing for this movie, so I get why, maybe people didn't like it as much the first time, but, they're wrong. I think everyone should give this movie a second chance.
Well, they went cheap on the marketing because all the drama started happening and the studio basically just, like, assumed it was going to be DOA. Like, they didn't even try.
Actually, Sony, like, one of the bigwigs from Sony, and then Paul Feig, who directed the movie, said that they thought this movie was going to be even bigger because of all the controversy, because they're like, no, there's no such thing as bad press.
But then I didn't see,
And they
like,
were wrong.
any good advertising for it after all that crap.
No, the trailers were all garbage, and that was a big problem. Like, realistically, the movie didn't look good going into it, and it was much better than it looked, and I just think we were all tainted the first time. I know Dustin liked it the first time, but
Tainted.
I was meh.
like a sack.
Sack. Tainted sack.
Yep.
Anyway, I love this movie. I love that. I liked all the little standalone jokes. Like when they're in the restaurant and she's trying to talk to the mayor and you hear all the rumbling and everyone's looking around and then some
the
fucking
dumpster.
I love
Like,
that
it's
stuff.
happening.
It's so good.
Well, the other thing, we didn't even talk about this at all. The other thing that I liked is in the original movie, the authorities figures were trying to be like, no, this isn't real. And this one, they were just like straight up like,
Bury it.
no, ghosts totally exist, but we can't have mass panic, so
Right.
we're going to call you guys frauds. Like, I thought that was an interesting aspect.
That's exactly what would happen.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they'd also actually go to prison, but yeah, that's what would happen.
They end up in Gitmo.
Well, I mean, they're also kind of like playing with large amounts of radiation. It's a little sketch.
Nuclear reactor on top of the vehicle.
Right, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's a little scary.
I did like Andy Garcia in this movie, and he's like pretty good mayor. And then like when she calls him the Jaws mayor, he freaks out.
Don't
Like,
you ever compare me?
I love that.
Yeah, I also think like speaking of like having like nuclear reactors and stuff like that, like I think that just kind of was able to fly more in the 80s. Like Back to the
Yeah.
Future, like that car it was nuclear, like weird scientists could make nuclear shit in the 80s, but you can't do that in 2016.
Nah, dude, you're
well,
a terrorist if you do
especially
it.
when they're no longer with a educational institution. Like if they have nuclear material, like they would be on some sort of terrorist watch list.
You have to steal it from terrorists like Doc Brown did.
Depends. It depends because you can
they
create your
did
own large levels of radiation without fission materials that are necessarily already illegal.
Well, and they did also steal all the equipment from that other school. Like the dean tried to stop
They
them.
stole
but they
a ton
ran
of
off
stuff
with it.
on their way
Fuck
out.
that guy.
Yeah.
All that worthless garbage belongs to the school.
And once again, I loved how it started. Like the proton pack started on this giant rolling cart that they had to haul with them down to the subway,
Yeah.
plug it in, and then it didn't really work. Like I loved that they had this trial and error, and the shit just got better and better. There were a lot of things that I do think that this movie did better, but I think once again, 30 years of special effects
Right.
and
I love the way the
filmmaking
ghosts look,
went
but I
into
also
this.
like that they included that old slime guy.
Slimer?
Yeah, that was nice.
It was a nice little.
And Slimette, I guess.
Slimette.
I remember not liking like the final form of the bad guy at the end of Rowan's character being like the giant logo, but I liked it a
loved it.
lot better. I thought it looked a lot cooler this time. I did think it was weird that they defeated him by shooting him in the nuts. When he doesn't
Had
have
to
any.
loosen his grip, man.
Yep. But it was the one special effect that I did not like in this movie, and this is something that I don't understand how we have not figured out how to do yet. But we have not figured out how to do a good falling effect, or like when she dives into the portal to save Yates.
Right.
It just looked like she was lying on a table, and they just had like
Because she was.
CG back her, like because she wasn't moving, like her hair wasn't moving. It just looked like too straight.
Okay,
They
but
were just
also,
grabbing
like,
each other's arms. Yeah.
when they're in the portal, they're like, honestly, that is the scariest fucking shit that has ever happened to them. They're like going into full on PTSD mode in reality. How do they have time to have this friend moment? Like, I
Literally
didn't really
falling
like that.
into
Because
hell.
it's a sack.
It's literally the same thing happened to Tony Stark in the first Avengers movie, and he had PTSD, and it affected him all the way through Iron Man 3, and then he was fine.
Yeah, but Tony Stark's a bitch.
Speaking of people who play with illegal radiation.
Yeah.
Sex.
No, his thing doesn't. He doesn't have any radiation stuff. All his stuff is
Oh, it's an arc reactor.
powered.
That's right. I mean,
You gonna tell me that Tony Stark doesn't have access to radioactive materials?
Oh no, he has
Is that
access
what
to
you're
it, but
trying to tell me
everything
right
he
now?
has
You
is
sound like a damn
No,
fool.
I'm not saying
You
he
sound
doesn't
like
have
a fool.
access to it.
God,
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he doesn't. He's not using the nuclear stuff. He's using the
you
arc
did say
reactor.
nuclear. What is wrong with you, Michael? I am ashamed.
Well, you should be.
I think I need to reassess my life now.
Don't do it.
Is it because you grew up with Republicans?
Oh. I want to talk about Chris Hemsworth more.
Yeah, change
I like
Yeah, I
the
bet you
headshot
do.
scene. The headshot scene. He's like, which
It's
one of
so
these makes
good.
me look more like a doctor playing the saxophone or me listening to the saxophone?
That was great.
Oh, he was so great in this movie.
Yeah, he was a win-win.
Kevin, answer the phone. I can't. It's in the aquarium.
I also like when he talks about the aquarium. He's like, an aquarium. He says it like he's super smart. He goes, an aquarium is a submarine for fish.
I love that fucking line. I think I laughed for like 5 minutes at that.
There's a lot of really great one-liners in this one. Like the guy who goes to hire them the first time to go to that haunted house, Ed Mulgrave Jr. He goes like, I saw your book. It's on tape. Only I know how to read. I'm sorry, Audible. You got this guy's wrong.
Oh.
Audible. It's all about books on tape. audibletrial.com/MDXpods. Get a free month and a free book.
Whoop, whoop.
Well, yeah. Look what happened to the guy who actually read it. Rowan. It's crazy.
Fuck yeah.
Crazy.
Crazy.
We didn't even really talk
Crazy.
about him at all.
Go ahead, talk about him. What's up?
The
Wait,
bad guy?
Oh, you said
The
bad
bad
guy.
How did
Yeah.
he end up leading all of hell, essentially? Right?
Yeah. And where did he learn how to make all that stuff?
Her
Or
book.
possess people.
From their book.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, the other thing that was interesting is how did he have, at the end of the movie, so like those FBI guys and the National Guard, Rowan is able to control them. Like he freezes them and makes them do like a little dance number.
Yeah. Disco.
Why could he not do that with the Ghostbusters?
Because he didn't want to.
Yeah, he didn't try.
That's weird.
Well, he did say that Kevin was literally making him stupider by the second. So
Oh, that's true. He
that
did
could
say
be the
that.
case.
Katrina, you actually, I don't remember what you said, but you said something. You had something actually really interesting to say about Rowan while we were watching the movie. I think it was like when he was in the diner and the waitresses didn't want to help him. Like you said something.
Fuck if I know.
Oh, well,
Did you write it
never
down?
mind then. No, I didn't write
I
it down.
didn't write
because
it
I thought
down.
You were gonna write it down.
Come on, Mike. You got to remember this stuff.
You know the other thing that they did that's kind of messed up? They totally plagiarized that Tagger's logo.
I know.
He could totally sue them for using his
He would.
his art.
He totally would.
Probably would.
Yeah. Motherfucker. Not that we're angry about trademark infringement or anything.
No. The other thing that I thought Holtzman was great, like, so when they first got that hearse, she asked if there was a body in it, and then she's like, "I can think of seven uses for a cadaver today." That character was great.
I love her. She's the best.
Hmm.
Mm.
I don't have anything else to say about this movie. I really enjoyed watching this movie, and like I think this will be a movie now. Like we have it on Blu-ray. We got it when it came out because it was like super cheap on Black Friday, and we just haven't watched it. But I feel like this is a movie that I'm probably gonna watch a lot more often now. Like, this will
Right.
probably be something I watch.
I
every
expected to
Halloween
be
time.
lukewarm about it. And then, I completely forgot Melissa McCarthy was in this. And when she appeared on screen, my heart kind of sank a little. I'm like, oh, because she just did so many movies where she was just like, basically written to be a disgusting fat slob.
Fat slob.
And then she finally like broke out of that in this movie and was like a really good dynamic character. So
Well,
that was a relief.
It's weird because she does a lot of different things. So she does that role a lot, but then like in Spy, she's not like that.
Spy was good, but it kind of like
Spy
that
was,
movie died.
no, that movie was one of the biggest movies of that year.
What the fuck? Where did it
did
go?
really well. It did really, really well, and that's why they were able to get a lot of people to do this
I
movie.
didn't see anything for
But
like a Blu-ray
it's-
release or anything.
We watched it on Blu-ray.
No,
but
like I
the,
remember the theater advertising, but I don't remember Blu-ray advertising.
Yeah, no, it was huge. It was a huge movie. It was one of the most like financially successful movies of that year.
It had a budget of $65 million and it grossed 110.
Holy fuck!
Yeah. The other thing, talking about Melissa McCarthy. Originally,
How did you know
they
that,
wrote
Dustin?
the role.
I just looked it up. I have this thing called a computer, and when I connect it to the internet, I get all of the knowledge of the world.
I'm just watching our voices make little squiggly lines.
But getting back to McCarthy, what you were saying, originally they wrote the role of Patty for her, and then the director, Paul Feig, he's known for doing all these like strong female comedy movies over the last 10 years. He was like, wait a second, she's played this role a lot. Let's give her a scientist role. And then they brought in Leslie Jones. So originally she was going to play the more obnoxious, the not smart person, the non-scientist. And then he realized he should give her a smart, intelligent role because she hasn't had one in a while. So
Right.
they recognized what you did and was like, let's let's make her a role model again. So
I loved
you know,
Leslie
good for
Jones's
them.
character in that she wasn't just a good vehicle for getting information in, but she was actually a good character. They didn't just make her the fucking token black woman.
I mean, if it wasn't for her, like there a lot of stuff didn't they wouldn't have found out. Like she was very helpful throughout the movie, and like she at many points she's like, I'm not a scientist, I'm a Ghostbuster. Like she was 100% bought in on what they were doing.
Right.
Which I thought was great. And like Winston was, you know, in the original movie was like, I'll believe anything you say if there's a steady check in it. And there's a point where he kind of doesn't want to go and help out, but he does. So I agree. I think she was a stronger character than Winston was. I was, like I said, my expectations for this movie were completely blown. Like I honestly went into this thinking I was going to like it less. I've said it a couple times. I love this movie this time around. Like this is a movie that I'm glad got made, and I really hope that somehow we can get a sequel someday.
Yeah, me too. Y'all awake?
Yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I don't know that I wish for a sequel though.
I think it deserves one. I think that if this movie didn't have all the controversy around it,
Right.
I think it would have done well enough. It deserved to make more money than it did. I would be fine. Like originally they planned on having, it was a little weird. Like they kind of backpedaled on a lot of stuff with like some of the backlash for it, like with the in terms of the sexism, where they were like, we're gonna have this movie, but then we're also gonna have like a Ghostbuster corpse, where it was gonna have, I want to say like Jonah Hill and somebody else. Like they were basically gonna do like 21 Jump Street kind of style thing, and they were gonna have another one that was a male-led one to like backpedal, and then they were gonna have the universes merge and stuff like that. So they were gonna have like an extended universe for Ghostbusters, which I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I definitely think this movie should get another one. It was really well done.
I'm just trying to think, like, what would the premise be? Would they bring back Zool, or like, because this one was all Rowan doing all the ghost stuff, right?
Ghost busting
Yeah.
tour.
I mean, they totally set it up where they can do Zool. There's any number of things. So originally with Ghostbusters 3 they wanted to do, they pitched this in the 90s, and they wanted to have like the Ghostbusters accidentally get, like while dabbling with some weird stuff, get sent to like an alternate New York that's like a hellscape, and it's basically like hell on earth.
They dabble with some weird stuff. You
Well,
mean like
stuff
their
like
entire
that.
career?
Like, I don't know if you remember, like, the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, but...
I
I
remember.
don't remember.
Oh, I
it.
loved it. Well, I'm a little older than you guys.
I loved it as a kid. I had a bunch of stuff for it, but I don't remember
It's
it.
on Netflix right now. But there's a handful of episodes where someone has to go inside the containment unit.
Yeah, I love
Oh,
those.
weird.
And those
They're
ones are
great.
like wild, dude. Like I remember being a little kid, and they're pretty scary. Like the background artwork is pretty creepy and weird. Like physics don't really
Egon's a
apply.
blonde.
Yeah, and then like I think at one point they have to like send Slimer in there to go do something, and then
Oh, Slimer's a bigger part in the cartoon.
Yeah.
He's like
and
Right.
a pet.
and then there's one where like Egon has to go in wearing like a suit that lets him enter it and stuff. It's pretty wild. But yeah, they've that's been toyed with in Ghostbusters like extended universe stuff.
I don't think I
Oh,
ever watched
interesting.
that show, but I definitely had more than one piece of Slimer merch. Because, you know,
I had a lunchbox, and I know I had an Egon action
Oh, dude,
figure.
I had all the action figures. My brother had the firehouse. One of my earliest memories was I was probably in like second or third grade, and I got like really good grades on my report card. So my mom took me to Target, and I could like get a toy or whatever. And I really wanted the proton pack, like the wearable proton pack. And we were like looking up and down all the aisles, like where all the Ghostbusters stuff was, and like I couldn't find it. And then for some reason,
no.
I was looking up in the top stock, and I saw like the cardboard box that said Ghostbusters Proton Pack. And I
Fuck
look at my
yeah.
mom, and I put it there, I was like, Proton Pack! Thank God I can read! Because like I
That's
just
awesome.
kind of wrapped my mind around reading. I was so happy. That was like the first time in my life that reading paid off for anything other than
Boom.
school.
Stay in
So,
school,
for
kids.
you listeners. Stay in school.
Learn to read. If you want a Proton Pack.
or just listen to Audible.
Audible.
Audible's not going to get you that Proton Pack down from the top stock.
So the only thing reading is good for is getting proton packs. Beyond that, audibletrial.com/MDXpods. Get a free book and a 30-day trial.
Boom.
Thank you for that segue, David. I really appreciate it.
Pro tips.
No problem.
Oh, seamless. Just
That
seamless.
was beautiful.
No one's even gonna notice that we put a plug in there.
What plug?
Exactly.
We're just two guys talking about Audible.
'Cause we love it so much. All right. Katrina, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity. Check out my YouTube. Subscribe. Binge watch.
And also check out our podcast, Ruin My Childhood. We're also doing 4 Halloween spooky themed episodes. I use Halloween a little loose because we are doing Edward Scissorhands, but it's kind of a monster movie in a weird way. And of course, everything MDXpods related you can see at MDXpods.com. Please follow us on Twitter at MDXpods. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. So, check us out on all our social medias. And once again, check out patreon.com/MDXpods. We appreciate anything you can do to help us out. And other than that, thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Katrina, for being on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Later, dudes.